Hello, everyone. My name is Mark Kageyama, and I'd like to welcome everyone here to Be Your Own Hero. I'm a stage 4 prostate, bone, and lung cancer patient. I've been battling cancer for almost 2 years and getting better, thankfully, to report. I am so happy about that. And I am so happy to be a part of the cancer community because the people involved I've met are so phenomenal. And I'd like to share a few things with everyone. Some of the things that people have been sending me, so I'd like to share that. I've mentioned it on the last video. This is a book, a children's book from Johnny Adams, who I interviewed a few weeks ago, and he writes children's books. And in fact, I'll open it up a little bit. And the book is called, this is his newest book, it's called Don't Give Up. And what an incredible message for children in this day and age, when it's all about this craziness. This sends a positive message, and I thank Johnny for sending me a copy of it because it's absolutely phenomenal. From Pamela McCulloch, she sent me a bunch of books, and I'll show it to you here, and books that she's read. And along with that, she sent me 2 bands in a bag. And so thank you so much, Pamela, for sending that. I started to read it, and I intend to finish it here soon. And then this week, my good friend and co-host on Cancer Conquering Community, Katie Gaspari, she sent me this. And this is pasta sauce. And she also sent me 2 of these and some pasta. And as soon as I got it that day, I cooked it up that night. It was phenomenal, absolutely phenomenal. We really enjoyed it. So thank you so much, Katie. And yeah, thanks to all the people who sent me stuff, and thanks to all the people involved with the cancer community and all the people that have come on these interviews. I appreciate you all, and I love you all, and thank you so much. Which brings us to today's special guest, and her name is Kara Onorato, and she's got an incredible story, which we are going to be so blessed and happy to hear today. Kara, please introduce yourself. Tell us a little bit about who you are.
Well, thank you so much for inviting me to be here today. As you said, my name is Kara Onorato. I'm currently residing in Savannah, Georgia, by way of DC and also Erie, Pennsylvania, where I was born. Spent most of my life there. I recently relocated to Georgia in December of 2021 because I followed my heart. I got engaged.
Oh, congratulations.
Yes.
That's
you.
Awesome.
Thank you. Not to mention the weather's kind of nice here, so it was a double bonus.
Beautiful. That is great. Congratulations.
Thank you.
When's the wedding going to happen?
We don't know. Life is hectic. He has 2 teenage daughters. One is a freshman in college and the other is a sophomore in high school, and they play soccer. So we're very busy, and it's ironic I find myself being a soccer mom again too.
That is truly awesome. And so that brings us to why we're here today. Can you please tell us about somebody so precious to you? Please share that.
Sure. I'm here today to talk about my experience, mostly my daughter's experience. Her name was Sonata. We called her Sonny. Her full name was Sonata Bell, and Bell is after my grandmother on my mom's side. It's a name that's been in our family forever, and her last name was Greshaw. She was honestly the single most amazing human being I ever had met in my life, and to this day, I'm in awe that God and her chose me to be her mom. She was born July 23rd, 1996 unplanned pregnancy at 20, sophomore in college. I had no idea what direction my life was going, but she was the sunshine, literal sunshine, and all of that. We lived a normal life, going to school and finishing my degree, raising her, working, and being a wife, and a soccer mom. I was a soccer mom from her 5th grade year until her senior year in 2014. And in 2015, she was diagnosed with acute myeloid leukemia, which is what brings me here to talk to you today.
So when she got diagnosed, what were your immediate thoughts, and how did you react to that?
So Sonny hadn't been feeling well for a little while. She was 19. She was starting her sophomore year in college. She was taking a full course load, working full time, even though I told her she didn't have to. She wanted to be independent because that's honestly who she was. She did life on her own terms always. She was playing in a soccer pickup league. She had a social life like most not normal 19-year-olds, doing things she probably shouldn't do, right? But she wasn't feeling well. And honestly, I just thought she was run down. I thought she was just doing too much and not getting enough rest. But then she started complaining about her throat being extremely sore. And so I thought, honestly, it was mono. That's what I thought. And she told me, Mom, you're crazy. I don't have mono. Mom's always crazy when you're a 19-year-old. She went to an urgent care. They diagnosed her with strep throat. They gave her a round of antibiotics. She took them, and usually after about your 2nd or 3rd dose, you start to feel better, right? I've had strep throat a couple of times in my life. You start to feel better, but she just wasn't getting over that hump quite so much. So she decided to go to just a regular doctor this time rather than an urgent care. And she went to a doctor, and he gave her a different antibiotic and a round of steroids, sent her on her way. Then she still wasn't feeling better. She called me. She was having a fever. Her throat was starting to feel worse at this point. And her fever was low at first. And I said, listen, just something wasn't sitting right with me. That mother's intuition. I felt heavy in my heart and on my spirit. I'm very faith oriented, and I just didn't feel right. And I said, listen, if your temperature gets to be about 101, I think you need to go to the emergency room. She told me I was being dramatic. But I said, listen, that's what you need to do. So this was now October of 2015. She was supposed to come visit me the weekend of the 13th. I had recently relocated to the DC area where she originally had started college. She was going to bring her new boyfriend, and we were going to have a nice visit. And it was going to be, in my eyes, one of those moments where mom and daughter become women friends, because she was at that age where we could start talking about different things. And that weekend, she had to go back to, or the weekend before she was supposed to come, she had to go back to the doctor because she still wasn't feeling well. And he kind of laughed at her, actually. And I remember her telling me how angry that made her. And he told her she was, just worried too much. Here's some more antibiotics and go home. And I remember her telling me, she's like, Mom, I looked at my boyfriend, and she said, he didn't even take any blood work from me. What if I have cancer? And those words ring in my head all of the time, especially when I'm talking to people like this, because even somewhere inside of her, she had an inkling that something wasn't quite right. Well, the weekend that she was supposed to come visit me, she was at her boyfriend's house, and she literally passed out in the bathroom because her body now is 75% leukemia. Her potassium was extremely low. Her magnesium was low. Her white blood cell count was up above 100,000. So her body was just all out of whack. And so her father and her boyfriend rushed her to a small community hospital. He was staying outside of Atlanta in the Covington area. And I remember trying to call her and just check on her because I hadn't heard from her a couple of days, which wasn't abnormal either, with work and school. And now she wasn't feeling well. I didn't think anything of it. But What gave me the greatest pause, Mark, was I called at 10 o'clock on a Tuesday morning, and her father answered her phone. This man worked 80, 90 hours a week. There's no way under normal circumstances would he be answering her phone. And so I could tell when I heard his voice, it was cracking, and I just knew something wasn't right. And that's how we found out that she was sick. The doctors told her that they knew something was wrong with her. They couldn't deal with it there. And so they sent her out to Emory University in Atlanta, where she received her official diagnosis of acute myeloid leukemia.
So at that point, what's going through your mind as a mom?
Oh, my goodness. I got to tell you, it's all a blur to me. That moment is a blur to me. I had, like I said, some intuition about something not being right. And I honestly, this might sound a little weird, but I was having these nightmares for a few months ahead of all of this about something being wrong and her father and I being in a hospital crying at the foot of the bed. And all of those dreams ended up coming true. I remember going into my job and telling my boss, which honestly, I don't care whether you call it God, Buddha, Allah, the universe, everything works for a reason, because I had just started this new job. I wasn't entitled to FMLA. I walked into my boss's office. Her husband was battling cancer during this time too. And I sat down in the chair without having know what the official diagnosis was. And I just said to her, I think my daughter has leukemia. And I just started bawling. I said, I don't know what to do. And if you know me, I'm never at a lack for words. That's just who I am. I love to talk. And I just my mind couldn't process it. And she goes, what you're going to do is you're going to go. That's it. You're just going to go. I said, well, what about work? She goes, no, we're going to get you a laptop. Don't worry about it. So on the drive home, it hit me. The whole severity of the situation hit me. I had already lost 2 friends to blood cancer throughout my life, AML in both instances. So I knew how aggressive this disease could be. I went home, literally lay on my bedroom floor, sobbing, begging God to just put me in her place. This wasn't what was supposed to happen. And something told me, you know what, Kara, you are built for this. Get yourself off the floor. You can be sad right now, but you need to go there and you need to be there for her. And that's exactly what I did. I immediately went to the airport, flew out to Atlanta to be there by her side. And as soon as I walked through the door, the tears stopped and the mama bear took over. But I was terrified, but I didn't let her know I was terrified.
And that is such a difficult thing to, process the different roles, how you feel as a mom, and then, making sure that you're there and strong for her, because that's what she needs. And that's what all cancer patients need at that particular time is compassion and guidance. And so, yeah, I could feel, what you're experiencing. So please go on.
So I get there, and when your mind's all over the place, I threw stuff into a suitcase, but I didn't really put anything in it, if that makes sense. And I went right to the hospital and I stayed by her bedside for those 3 weeks that she was in the hospital. So I'll walk you through that whole scenario. You don't want to be on the internet when you first hear the words you have cancer, because it's not a good place to be. It's just not a good place to be. It makes you more scared than you already are. But in that vein too, it also gave me the right questions to ask her doctors, right? And gear up on how I could handle helping her through this process. So the first goal was to try to get her blood cell count down enough to be able to start a chemo regimen for her. And because the strep throat now was out of control, her whole throat was so swollen that she could barely eat, barely talk. So bringing in that whole team to help try to, find the right treatment for her. So they gave her this procedure called leukapheresis. And if you've ever donated plasma or blood, it's kind of similar, except they put it here instead of here, right? And they pull out the blood, they run it through this machine, they strip the white blood cells, and they put everything back into you. And the goal was to get her count under 50,000 to start the chemo regimen. So she had to do that twice. There were lots of tests, lots of different doctors in and out. Emory is an amazing facility. It's a research in a teaching hospital, and they take the team approach when they treat their patients. I am absolutely convinced she received the absolute best care that she possibly could while she was there. The nursing staff was phenomenal. So for those 3 weeks, I lived there, I slept there, I sat by her side and drove her absolutely nuts when she became conscious enough, and
That's your job as a mom.
Exactly. But here's the other thing you have to understand too, as a caregiver. You're not just mom, and she's not a baby. She was 19 years old, so she was an adult. She got to decide whether I even got to participate in her care or her treatment, even though I wanted to be helicopter mom. I literally had said this to her, like, okay, all right, I'm just going to sell everything. I have some friends that live here in Atlanta. I'm just going to go stay with them. And she's like, hold on a minute. I'm going to be out of this hospital by the end of this week. So don't you worry about it. No. And so I had to take heed from her, even though it killed me on the inside. We want to put a Band-Aid on it. We want to kiss all our children's boo-boos and make them go away. But at 19, that's when her life was just beginning, right? She was off at college, figuring out who she was as a woman, what she wanted to contribute to society at this time. And all of a sudden, bam, now she's faced with her mortality. So she has literally no control over the trajectory of her life, but she does have control over her care. So I had to be mindful of that, even though I wanted to just glue myself to her and hold her and rock her like I did when she was an infant. I couldn't do it. It wasn't my cancer diagnosis. It was hers.
That is such a great point, because people who get cancer have to realize it's so important that they take control of their own destiny, because the most important person to you is you. I mean, not your doctor. Your doctor, spends 15 minutes with you and you're done. But it's you who has to fight. It's your life. It's not somebody else's. And that as a parent is just so difficult. And I totally understand what you were going through, because I think we all go through that with different things, but to do that with cancer is just incredibly difficult. And I commend you so much. I don't. I tend to talk a lot too. So,
okay.
But please go on. I just love hearing the story.
Sure. So when she decided to tell me it was time for me to go home, I took my cue those first 3 weeks. And I'm telling you, I really watched God work through her, and I watched her whole life. So Sonny was very special. She did everything on her own terms her whole life. When she decided she wanted to be potty trained, she was potty trained. That was it. No accidents, nothing. She was done. When she decided she was done with the pacifier and the bottle, that was it. She was done. My goal as her mom was to raise her to make decisions on her own and understand why she was making those decisions, right? So when she told me I had to go, I cried. I cried on the outside of the room, and I left. And sure enough, 2 days later, she was out of the hospital. So she finished her regimen of chemo, her first induction chemo. And then you wait, a couple weeks and you're on pins and needles. Having cancer is like the worst roller coaster ride you can ever have in your life. And I know you can relate to that, because one day you get great news, the next day you get the worst possible news in the whole world. So she was fine for a while. She never really truly reached remission, and I'll tell you why. So acute myeloid leukemia is aggressive. Traditionally doesn't come in people her age. It's mostly in older adults. She had AML6, which means there's something in the environment contributed to it. Then she also had a genetic mutation called an FLT3 genetic mutation. I'm far from the doctor, but what I know is that reduced her chances significantly. So most AML patients have a 50% chance of living 9 months with AML. You add the genetic mutation to that, you've got a 5% period, because basically what ends up happening is it basically protects the cancer. Is the best way I can describe it. It doesn't allow traditional chemotherapies to work very well for you. She decided to do a couple clinical trials, and she also decided to do a stem cell transplant. Luckily, we found a donor in Germany that was 100% match, right? And in this conversation, I think it's very important for me to stress this. She was lucky, okay, because of her ethnicity, to find 100% match. It is imperative and so important for people that are not from European descent to become part of the registry, because people that are of African American, Asian, and Latino descent have a significantly less likelihood of finding a match. So it's very important to make sure that all those communities are represented in the donor match. It's very registration system. It's very easy. You just swab. That's it. It used to be you gave blood and they had to tap your spine to donate. Most of that doesn't even happen anymore. It's just like donating blood. It's very, very painless and inconvenient, or not inconvenient. So she got her bone marrow transplant. And again, here's another example of Sonny doing things on her own terms. She decided she wasn't going to let me know until it was done. I was so hurt and so mad, but at the other side of the coin, how can I be? How can I be? She wanted to have control. So her father called me after she was past the 10-day mark, and he said, listen, don't be mad at me. She asked me not to say anything. I said, okay. She said, well, she had her stem cell transplant. She's doing okay. She's starting to have a little bit of signs of graft versus host. And for people that don't know what that is, that's when your body is rejecting the new cells. And so it can show up anywhere. It can show up in your pancreas, your lungs. It can show up in your liver, your kidneys. For her, it was in her kidneys, and then also in her hands and feet. All the skin started to peel repeatedly on the bottoms of her hands and her feet. But again, I went back there, and I was there again with her as much as she wanted me to be there. The way the universe works is, during all of this, I was able to get a job with the District of Columbia government, and they have 8 weeks paid medical leave that I was able to take intermittently. I was also able to have really good health insurance, which a lot of cancer patients don't have. In addition to that, Sonny happened to get sick during the Affordable Care Act, which I know there are people who don't think it's a good thing, but in Sonny's instance, she was alive for 18 months during her fight because of ACA. She was diagnosed at 19. Her claims were well over $1 million, right?
Wow.
And any gap in your care as an AML patient could kill you, literally could kill you. And so she was able to benefit from that, and able to benefit in the fact that her mom didn't have to be down there next to her driving her crazy. She could call her mom and say, hey, Mom, you want to take this week of taking me to chemo? And I could say, here I come, right? So after her bone marrow transplant, she was very hopeful. She said, Mom, I feel the best I've felt since I got diagnosed. She's like, I feel great. But again, with cancer, it's a roller coaster ride, right? And then she found herself with the blood counts going back up for the leukemia. And they were going to put her in a clinical trial. And it was a clinical trial of compassionate use. There was really, they were running out of options. But before all of this, Sonny had decided that she wanted to get involved. She wanted to be part of advocacy. She wanted to educate people. And so she shared some of her experiences on social media. I shared some of her experiences on social media with her permission at that time, and she decided that she wanted to get involved with LLS. She believed in them, and I'll tell you why. So those first 2 weeks, remember I told you I left, she was pretty much out of it. Well, as soon as she started coming to, we were watching television. They were telling a story about this toddler who they were calling, it was cured, right? Most of the time you don't use that language around blood cancer. They were saying she had no evidence of disease and she was cured from leukemia from CAR T-cell therapy. This was the first time since the diagnosis I saw Sonny's eyes just light up. There, my baby was there again. She was so hopeful. And she looked at me, she said, Mom, it's like, I just know if I can stay alive long enough, they'll find a treatment that works for me. That's what rings in the back of my mind and in my spirit when I tell her story and when I continue her work. So what she did is she started helping other people, even while she was sick. You know, she shared all the gifts. She was so loved. And when people found out she was diagnosed, we couldn't keep everything in her hospital room. She donated them to a young man who we suspect was on the spectrum. He's very nonverbal, had very few visitors while he was there. And we decided we were going to help him and decorate his room. So she gave some of her things to him. One of my friends was diagnosed with leukemia during this time. She reached out to him to help find him help through LLS and other avenues. She gave her hair on her own terms when she realized that chemo was going to take it. And it wasn't the first time. When she was in high school, one of her very favorite teachers was diagnosed with breast cancer, and she helped coordinate a fundraising event for her teacher and a route for the girls to donate their hair for cancer patients. And she started 2 teams for Light the Night Walk, which is before COVID was one of the biggest fundraisers that the Leukemia and Lymphoma Society put on. So she had a team in Erie and a team in Atlanta where she was getting treatment. So I say all that because it's important, because this is why I'm sitting here talking to you today. She did all of these things wanting to help other people. And so I want to take that torch and carry it on. There's one thing I promised Sonny. So it wasn't really the cancer that took her. It was sepsis as a complication of having cancer. Her blood cell counts were so bad that she got an infection and she couldn't fight it. She got C. diff and it ended up going into her bloodstream, and she made the choice that she was done fighting. And she had told me after her first stem cell transplant, Mom, that was so awful. I can't do it again. I didn't want to hear it. I wanted her to fight. But how am I going to tell her that she has to put herself through that over and over and over again for a maybe or a what if, you know? And I remember the day that we were having that conversation, I was telling the doctor came in and was asking her, you know, what her plans were, what's going on. And I said, oh, she wants to be an oncology nurse and she's got all these plans. And she just looked at me. She said, Mother, no. So she knew. She absolutely knew. And I had to let her make that decision.
Wow, that is tough. That is, as a parent. But, you know, you have to respect them and appreciate them for their decisions. So I completely understand where you're at, because that's the way I've always treated my kids is with respect, and I always wanted to treat them more as an adult, and to be able to back off like that, it's difficult. It's very difficult. So, but please continue. This is just a story that everybody needs to hear.
So I get the phone call from her dad that they think she has an infection, and I said, okay, I'm coming. And so that started the final 3 weeks in the hospital. Now, mind you, all throughout this, she was optimistic. She tried to travel. She said, I'm just going to try live my life to the best that I can. She took on a little part-time job when she felt good. And all the while still trying to help other people and just live as much of what she considered to be a normal life. Her dad told her, you got to try to keep on living. You got to keep moving. You can't just, let this be everything, and I think in many parts he was right in that. She's very hopeful through the whole thing. And ironically, her transplant doctor ended up getting cancer. And as he's going in for his own treatment, he stops into her hospital room to talk to her. And he said, you're too good of a patient, Miss Sonny. He says, I need you. If your pain's on a 5, you got to tell them it's on a 10. You can't just sit here and be in misery. He always told her she takes bad news better than anybody he's ever met. But he was very honest with her. He said, if you get an infection, he's like, that you're probably not going to leave the hospital. And she appreciated that candidness. She needed that candidness in order to make the decisions she made. And unfortunately, shortly after Sonny passed away, so did he. The universe brings all of us together in such a weird, strange way that just fills me with awe. Watching her bless other people in her time of need. But those last 3 weeks, the nurses in the leukemia floor at Emory, oh my gosh, they eventually became family. They'd come in on their days off just to check on her. And she was out of it because sepsis had set in. And I'm not going to go into the details to that because I don't choose to remember Sonny like that. But it was the worst of the worst. I'm just going to say that part. She was very sick. She was in a lot of pain. Her body started to shut down, and the doctors all came in and we all cried together. I mean, literally the dream that I had of her father and I standing at the end of the bed, it happened exactly the way I dreamt it had happened. And when they told us, it was up to her, they gave her an option. The option was just going to prolong the inevitable. She woke up long enough to have a conversation with us, and we told her what our options were. I said, if they take your PICC line out, you know what that means. Or if they take your port out, you know what that means, right? She says, yeah, okay. And she had some meetings one-on-one with me, meetings with her dad and her nana who came in, her stepmom. And she told me what I had no idea that she had been up to. She said, Mama, everything's already taken care of. She's like, I planned everything. Dad knows what I want. She said, I have a little white box in my bedroom for you. I said, okay. I tried not to cry, but by that time it's a little hard to hide the tears, And they transferred her down to hospice. You ever see those videos on like Facebook or TikTok of the people who donate their organs and they give them that last walk down the hall?
No, I haven't, honestly.
This has reminded me of that. The entire floor came out. All of the nurses stood along the hallway as we took her down to hospice. We took her down to die, basically. And it's about 5 days it took. And, we all just kind of sat around thinking that this wasn't real. And, her Nana was crying and her aunts were crying, and I'm trying to comfort them and be strong for them and step out of the room and go call my girlfriends and, have my own personal meltdown. And the nurses would come in on their days off and come pray over Sonny. And I did the same thing. And the last coherent moment that she had was just her and I at that moment. And I am so tired, And I said, baby, I said, you have a really good fight. And, she was on oxygen by this time, and she says, I know, Mama. And I said, baby, you don't have to fight anymore. She goes, I know, Mama. And I said, her grandfather had passed away from cancer a few years prior, and she used to go on tractor rides with him. And our favorite place together and to travel was to the beach. So I told her, I said, baby, I said, I'm gonna cry, but I'm gonna be okay. I promise. And I think heaven, Papa is waiting for you on his tractor, and heaven is filled with beaches. I just kissed her little head. That's the last thing I said to her. And I intended on keeping that promise. That's why I'm here. That's why I advocate, because nobody should have to do this by themselves,
Absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, I just can't believe, what you've gone through, and your spirit and your heart is shining through, and her spirit and her heart are shining through as well. And so why don't we talk about what you've been doing since then to keep her memory alive, and because that's every bit as important.
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah. So I wanted to continue to do the walk, the Light the Night walk for the Leukemia and Lymphoma Society in her honor. I volunteered for the first year in our hometown of Erie, Pennsylvania. That's where our base was. So I just felt natural to do it there again. That's where all her friends were, our family. So we started a team there. We did a couple different things. It kind of has metamorphosized over the last 5 years. She passed in 2017 on March 29th. So it's kind of taken its own life, sort of. I wanted to have a way to honor other people like she did. And I wanted a way to honor her as well. And so we named our team Team Sunny Sunshine. I just started going with what was on my spirit to do. I created a website. I designed a team t-shirt, which has kind of grown a life of its own as well. On the front of the t-shirt, I actually have one. Would you like to see it?
Yes, I would.
So what I decided to do, see on the front, that's part of her tattoo. So she had a tattoo right here on her side. It was a sunflower with a compass in the middle of it. Sunflowers were her favorite. So I felt like I had to incorporate it in there so that we represent her. And then on the back, so there's a place in Erie called Iron Empire Clothing that helps us with the shirt every year. And we put the year on it. And then there's a couple things on the back here. The big G there, that's for my friend Gary, who passed away 4 years before Sonny from cancer. And Sonny went with me to Pittsburgh to visit him during it. He had blood cancer as well. But all these names on the back of the shirt are somebody who's been impacted by cancer. And we say cancer, not just blood cancer, for a couple of reasons. everybody's cancer journey and cancer battle deserves to be honored. And LLS, which is the Leukemia Lymphoma Society, a lot of their research that they have funded has now, even though it started for blood cancer, has now started to be treatments for other types of cancer. So that's, to me, that's very important. So we celebrate. And if you allow me for this year, I'd also like to add your name to the back of our shirt so we can honor you as well.
I would be honored. Absolutely honored. Thank you, Kara.
You're welcome. And what we do with this is we walk and we remember and honor and celebrate everybody that's on this t-shirt. But there's also the second component to this one. Sonny was my travel buddy. We went everywhere together. Even when she was a little baby, she was always by my side. The last trip we took was Hawaii in her junior year. And we were planning that when she graduated with her bachelor's, I was supposed to be done with my doctorate at that time, and we were going to go to Italy and Greece. We didn't get to do that. So I said, well, let's get people to wear this shirt and take Sonny with them. So she's been everywhere. Everywhere I go, she goes. And then my friends and people that I don't know take the shirt, they wear it, they travel. She's been to Machu Picchu. She's been to Iceland. She's been to Vietnam. She's been to Paris. She's been to Italy, all places I know she would want to go. So that's part of it. The other thing I do is help connect people with services, whether it's social service agencies, things that I know about, just try to connect people through Leukemia Lymphoma Society or American Cancer Society, or somebody that I've known that's had cancer. Because Sonny, again, how the universe works, the young man she was dating at the time she was diagnosed, his mother was a leukemia survivor. Wow. That was the first person that could give her hope, could explain to her what it was going to be like to have leukemia, what the treatment was going to be like. She was one of the first people to really know what to get her to support her. I had no idea at that point, even though I had lots of friends and family that had different types of cancer. I didn't know what to do exactly for her. But now, having gone through that, I also, when we have friends that are diagnosed in our sister circle that I have, we rally around them and we prepare comfort baskets for them. I've had a friend that's been diagnosed with breast cancer, so we got together as a sister circle and provided her with a wig and some other things that I know Sonny helped Sonny with the chemo, different types of mouthwash, mints, lotions, because dry skin and chemo, I mean, I'm sure you know.
Oh, yeah.
Right? So there's special things that I just happen to know. So I share some of that sunshine. What I would like to eventually do is turn all of this into a foundation and take it one step further. Because I do, during the Christmas season, I share a wish list from Sibley Memorial Hospital. And I picked Sibley just because that was in my backyard at the time. And they had recently built this beautiful radiation unit for pediatric oncology. And I happened to be someplace and met somebody who worked there. And we got to talking. And I'm like, I have this tiny, small life insurance policy that I had for Sonny, and I want to do something with it. How can I put it to use? So now it's that activity has kind of grown too. Every year at Christmas time, I share an Amazon wish list on my social media, and people send gifts to the kids there that are receiving treatment, or I'll share things. I've created social media pages on Instagram and on Facebook for Team Sunny Sunshine. And I'll share other people's journeys and messages and help raise funds for them on a grassroots level. Some things as simple as gas money, right? Or an inspirational book, or helping, whatever it is, a meal calendar for the family, especially if it's a child, you don't think about those things. Anything I can do to help, I try to do.
That's beautiful. Absolutely beautiful. We generally like to do about a half an hour interview. We went way over, and I'm so happy because I did not want to interrupt this incredible, incredible story. So all this being said, what would be your final thoughts that you would like to share with our audience?
I think if you are a person that's a caregiver to somebody with cancer, I think you need to be able to realize that you cannot be there for the way you think you need to be there. You need to be there in the way that your friend, your family member, your loved one needs you to be there. And sometimes that's not being there, right? Sometimes that looks like just going and sitting, saying nothing, whatever that is, holding their hand during treatment, if you're allowed to do that anymore. Those things. I think the other thing I want to stress to people is know your body and don't be afraid to talk to your doctor. Tell them doctors are human beings like us. They're brilliant, but they don't know everything. You know when there's something wrong, you know your body, and insist, even if it makes them angry, because if it makes them angry, then that tells you you need to find another doctor, plain and simple. And also find joy in your everyday life. Our lives are terribly short. Spread some sunshine, plant a sunflower seed for my Sonny. Go to our Team Sunny Sunshine Facebook and share some of that sunshine. Smile at somebody, eat a cupcake. That was Sonny's favorite. Listen to a good song. Just find something that makes your spirit feel good.
I can't add anything else to what you just said. You know, I think one of the points that I would like to mention, number one, thank you so much for sharing your story and for being so transparent and honest, because we all feel this, absolutely. And one of the things when you were just talking at the end here is little things can make a big difference in someone else's life. We don't know what somebody else is going through. And if we make just a little bit of an effort, you know, to help make somebody's day, I think that can go a long way to helping our world become a better place. Thank you so much, Kara. It's been an absolute honor to share this interview with you. And I thank you so much. Thank you, everyone, for joining us here at To Be Your Own Hero. And we will see you next week. Thanks once again.